Good morning. I am Margaret Domka, and I am the Education Director of NASO. I am honored to be here this morning to share with you our results from our industry's largest survey. Before we get started, I would like to thank the NASO board, along with People Trail, for supporting our efforts in collecting this data and in understanding our vision for where we can go with this information. But most of all, I would like to thank all of you. We have an incredible amount of data here, and this couldn't have happened without the efforts of the people in this room and so many more. The administrators that helped us distribute the survey all over the country. The officials who took at least an hour apiece to take this survey. This is what has made this survey successful. And we are so appreciative of your efforts, and it is clear that we are an invested community, an invested industry. This survey consisted of 162 questions, most of them multi-part. So in the end, we were able to collect up to 750 data points per person. A grand total of 6 million data points. With those 6 million data points today, we're going to discover some really interesting conclusions that are going to help us take our next steps forward in this industry. Those 6 million data points, though, I have to tell you, I can't cover them all in half an hour. So what we see here is just scratching the surface. We will continue to look at our data and draw more conclusions for a long time to come. But we're excited to share the beginning with you. Our industry has finally spoken. Our officials finally have a voice. And we are ready to hear that voice and to take action for our next steps forward. So, who participated in our survey? We had 17,487 respondents total. 6.43% of those were females. 69.9% of those were white. We'll get into more details about the ethnicities later. You can see that we are looking at where the officials are located that responded, and we had respondents from all over the country in every sport. We are looking at the data from 13 different specified sports, in addition to an other sports category, which is absolutely no less important, but at this moment in time, we have fewer officials in those categories. Sports like equestrian, rodeo, cricket, and we appreciate the feedback from each and every sport that participated. So, who are we? There is a lot of data on this dashboard. If we look at the top row, the only thing we've added here is our average age of officials, 53.29. When we come down to these colored bars going across the page, we can see our ages, our median ages divided by sport. And we can see that those average ages all fall somewhere between the age of 40 and 60. When we go down below, it shows us the levels of sport at which officials have ever officiated. So the level of sport where the most officials have ever officiated is high school varsity, based on our respondents. And then next we have youth, with 69.51% of the respondents, sub-varsity, adult amateur, small college. We had some that didn't answer. Major college finally followed up by the smallest number of participants, which is professional, as I'm sure we would expect. we come across to the next chart, it shows us our education level. Yesterday at the oil luncheon, Barry gave us a sneak peek and told us that we are a very educated group. I can give you some additional numbers for that. The U.S. Census Bureau in 2015 said that across the country nationwide, 42% of our citizens have an associate's degree or higher. In our industry, 65% of us have an associate's degree or higher. In addition to that, our numbers become even more incredible when we look at higher education. Things like doctorate degrees, professional degrees, master's degrees. The nationwide average for these advanced degrees is 12%. We are more than double. 25% of us carry advanced degrees. We are an educated group. But now, I have to tell you, what you see up front here on this dashboard is just the beginning. What I'm going to do now is start clicking through some of the data. And every time I click on something, you'll see the numbers on the dashboard change because it's filtering out just that group. So hold on to your seats, watch closely. We don't have a ton of time, but we'll get through as much as we can. So the first thing I'd like to show you, we see our average age is 53.29. The sport with the youngest officials, on average, is hockey. The average age being 48. The sport with the oldest officials is track and field, with that average age being 58. So that's our youngest and oldest, which tells us that our average ages across all of our sports fall within those 10 years, 48 to 58 years old. And I'm sure that we would all agree that we would hope that is a little lower than what it is. Continuing on, we can look at our group of female respondents, which is also interesting. Again, let's look at that average age, 53. But of our female respondents, the average age is 48. Our female officials right now tend to be younger than our male officials. Interesting. And I can't help but come down to the education level, which has also been sorted at the same time. And females have about a 0.5% ratio higher of doctorate degrees, and approximately 10% more of the women hold master's degrees. This is interesting information for who we are recruiting and who we are retaining in our industry. And I have to point out one more thing on this dashboard before we move on. You know, sometimes sports get connected with this image of the dumb jocks, right? Well, if we look at our doctorate degrees one more time, 1.58%. And we look at our master's degrees one more time, 15.78%. The next thing I'm going to do is filter this out for our professional referees, our most elite level. These officials, 3.56 hold doctorate degrees, well over double. Just our average, and we are already highly educated. And 21.08% hold master's degrees. Our elite referees most definitely are not dumb jocks. On to our next dashboard. Some of the information that we found certainly supported the trends that we have all believed for a long time are going on. And this top half of this dashboard shows that. We are looking at the years that officials started along our bottom axis, starting with 1952 all the way through 2017 as we move across the page. On the left axis, we see the age at which officials started, starting from 20, moving up to the top to 70. So the intersections that we're looking at are the year officials started along with their age when they started. The numbers on this graph are significant, or the colors on this graph are significant. The green shows us where we have the highest level of concentration of officials that started in that year at that age. Next is yellow. Our next level of concentration is orange, and our lowest level of concentration is red. So I'm sure we can all very quickly pick up the pattern. We're looking at yellows and greens down low to the left, and getting higher as we move to the right, which is a clear indication that our industry is getting older. In fact, if we narrow this down a little bit more, in the 1970s, the vast majority of our officials, the greatest concentration of them, were joining between the ages of 18 and 21 years old. Now, in the 2000s, we see that greatest concentration of official joining in their late 40s. Wow. Is that a jump? 20s to late 40s in not a lot of time. So we'll move on. What are the motivations for our officials to become involved? 19% of our officials told us that they joined the referee ranks, their officiating ranks, because they were asked by someone else who was an official at the time. An additional 10% joined because they were asked by a sports organization to become an official. And yet another 3% joined because they were asked by a coach they were playing for at the time. This tells us that 33% of our officials become officials because we reach out and ask them to. When we are recruiting our officials, we need to reach out and ask people to join. And our coaches do as well, and our sports organizations do as well. And to make that an even greater number, another 15% of our officials join because they ask someone else who is already involved if they can join. Even though this conversation is initiated by the other side, it is still a conversation that's incredibly important. So in the end, we have 48% of our officials, 48% of our officials, 1 out of 2, joins because we have a conversation with them. Joins because we have that interaction and let them know that we want them to become a part of our family, which compares to only 4% of us joining as a result of posters, websites, banners, or other similar types of advertisements. Maybe this helps us know where our dollars should go when we're deciding how to recruit. When we look at the information in the bars in yellow on the left, the yellow parts of those bars tell us why people joined. Not just who helped them join, but why. The vast majority of our officials joined for the love of the game. And when we look at these bars, we can obviously see that there are many other reasons for joining, but the white bars are indicating after people joined, did they change their reason for remaining? How are we retaining them? Why are they staying involved? So the white indicates the change that we've had in a reason from when you started to why you continue. The greatest amount of change is by officials who have been in the industry who are now staying in order to mentor other officials. This is great news for our industry. This is fantastic. But the information gets even better. Because, let's look again. We had 19% of our officials say they joined because they were asked by an official at the time. Of these people who want to mentor other officials, 33% of them were asked by someone else when they first joined to become part of the program. What does this tell us? This tells us that when we reach out personally and when we mentor these officials, not only does it help us grow our numbers in the immediate time, but it also helps us down the road, because those people that we mentored and we talked to are the same people who are going to do the same for the next generation. We are powerful. Each and every one of us are powerful in bringing more of us, more family members, into our industry. Our next dashboard, we really have two pretty distinct parts of this dashboard. Up at the top, we're looking at the level of safety our officials feel within the officiating industry. Our first two percentages across from each other are tied together. Both of these percentages are telling us what percentage of our officials at some point have felt their safety has been threatened by another member of our officiating community. For men, that number is 11.3%. For women, that number is almost double, 20.6%. And again, in my opinion, this is a place that we as an industry need to find improvement. Our second set of numbers right below that talks about the safety we feel from external forces, the spectators, the players, the coaches, etc. We can see that we feel even more strongly that our safety is in jeopardy from these groups of people. Men, 47.9%, say at some point they have felt threatened. 44.7% of women at some point have felt threatened. Here, on the one hand, in our last slide, we said about 50% of us, no, well more than that, it was the vast majority of us joined for the love of the game. And here we are doing what we love, but we have to worry about our safety being threatened. Our data now will hopefully help the world see why it's important to protect our officials if we want to keep them in the game. The bottom section, the red and green chart, shows us some information about our underrepresented groups of officials. Many of us can recognize that we, in order to increase our numbers, need to start focusing on some different groups that we don't see enough of right now. Women, people of different ethnicities, in addition to young officials. But how is it that we can get these people interested and involved? We ask those questions. And Mike Pereira, where's Mike Pereira is back here. Mike Pereira has started the Battlefields to Ball Fields initiative, which we heard about yesterday. I've also heard Mike Pereira say on multiple occasions that we have to begin mentor groups. We have to invest the time and the energy and the effort into providing mentors to our officials. Mike, I'm here today to tell you that we now have the data to show our officials absolutely agree. 74% of our officials feel the very first effort we should focus on is providing a mentoring program. This is not just one group of those officials. This is across the board. The incredible thing about the data we see at the bottom is that every group of our officials has agreed in what should be done. The second step that we feel should happen as a group is more focused recruitment efforts targeting these groups of people. And what's also very interesting is pointing out the things that we feel should not be done. And across the board, only 2% of people agreed with the statement that we should push people forward through the ranks just because they belong to these groups. That is not what is desired. These groups and the entire population of referees want all officials to move forward because of their credentials and their experience and what they can do on the field, in court, etc. And I want to just show you that data so you can see it for your own eyes. I'm going to filter this out for females, and you can see the same exact trend. The greatest percentage say, let's get a mentoring program. Next, let's recruit women specifically. And finally, please don't push me forward just because I'm a woman. I want to meet the same requirements as everyone else, but give me the opportunity and access to have the training to get there. If I look at the age as well, you will see those officials also agree. The first top green bar, still the mentoring. Second green bar, still that we should recruit young officials. And the bottom bar, still saying, don't push me forward just because I'm young. Push me forward because I deserve to be pushed forward. And finally, I'd like to show you a little bit more about our different ethnicities. So, I'm going to tell you, as I add these, what ethnicities I'm adding. You can watch the numbers that are inside of the large white people, because they will change to show you where our numbers are at. So first, these are Middle Eastern and North African officials that responded. I'm going to add to that Hispanic, Latino, and Spanish origin officials. Asian officials. We have officials with 2 or more ethnicities, Black or African American officials. Then we have white, but I'm not going to add them into our group. We have officials with some other race or ethnicity group. And finally, we'll add our Native Hawaiian or other specific islanders. Our last category here, we're not going to include in the group either, because those were respondents that did not answer this specific question. So we can see here that out of our 17,500 respondents, we had 1,333 males of different ethnicities. We had 143 females of different ethnicities. When we look at the top of the dashboard again, we can see that the level of threat that they have felt, the amount that they have felt their safety has been threatened, has risen in all 4 of those categories. If we want to incorporate the different groups of officials, we need to make sure they feel safe in our community. But moving on to the bottom bars, these groups are no different than all of the rest of us in that first, they say, please bring us mentors. We need those programs. Second, we're saying, please have recruitment efforts that target these groups and help us feel welcome. And finally, also saying, but don't push me forward just because of my ethnicity. Push me forward because I deserve to be there. Important data for all of us to know. So what about sportsmanship? We can't talk about officiating without thinking about sportsmanship. We look at the top, it gives us some information about whether we ourselves heckle other officials, whether we in this industry criticize other officials, and whether we feel sportsmanship is getting better or worse. We can see that 57% of us feel sportsmanship is getting worse. It's a high number. If we look down at the bottom, this tells us where we feel that sportsmanship is at its worst. 36% of our respondents felt that the worst level for sportsmanship is the youth competitive games. We also consistently felt that the greatest instigators of the problems with sportsmanship are parents, with 39.54% of us listing that as our number one problem. I want to show you, too, that this does vary by sport. So if we look at rugby, 71% of rugby officials feel sportsmanship is getting worse. A lot of rugby officials feel that sportsmanship is getting worse. And swimming happens to be the best sport in this category, and only 50%, 49% feel it's getting worse. But can we really say only 49% of us feel this is getting worse? I mean, come on. 49% is not a good number. Hopefully we can impact the world and make sportsmanship better. Except, I told you earlier that we have had our voices heard because of this survey. But there is a lesson in this dashboard that at the moment might be slightly hidden. But I will tell you, if we want our voices heard, we need to stop for just a moment and listen to them ourselves. These 57% of officials who said they felt that sportsmanship is getting worse, when we filter out just those answers, we find out that still 15% of those people heckle other officials. And still 11% of those people criticize publicly other officials. This data has a clear message. We have heard, even within the last couple days, some sportsmanship issues that make us gasp. But if we desire to have respect in the external world, we must lead by example. We must be the first ones to show respect to ourselves and to show respect to all of our family members. We can do this. We are the beginning. So, that time flies. I'm already through everything that I have time for today.